15 years ago, I walked out through the emergency room doors into a cold, dark, rainy night. I had just worked a 36-hour shift in the cardiac care unit of the emergency room. And I was so exhausted. Still wearing my hospital greens, I walked out through those dark, wet streets to my car, and I drove home to the adorable little apartment that I had so naively rented at the beginning of my residency, thinking that I would actually be there in the daylight. And I walked into that dark little space, and I threw my stuff on the ground, and I threw myself on the ground. And I lay there, and I just sobbed and sobbed. I had no idea how I was going to get through the rest of my life. I was $100,000 in debt. I'd been in university for 11 years at that point. This was all I knew how to do. And there were a couple of significant problems with my having chosen emergency medicine as a career. And these are true. The first is that I panic under pressure. I'm not kidding. Meredith saw a little bit of that earlier. Yes, I am the very last person you want standing in front of you if you ever have a heart attack. In fact, I will finish having my own heart attack before you. Not what you want. The second significant problem, and this is also true, is that I can't stand the sight of large amounts of blood. And I won't tell you how it was that I found that out, but I didn't discover until I was in my residency. And again, not a thing that you're looking for in an emergency room physician when you are in the greatest crisis of your life. You don't want her passing out. So as I lay there, just not even knowing how I was going to get through the next day, much less an entire career doing this, things seemed so hopeless, just so impossible, that as I lay there, I actually started thinking about what I had in my bathroom medicine cabinet and whether I had enough there to just exit the planet that night. And I think everybody in this room probably at some point will reach a point in your life where you feel so backed into a corner, you feel like you've looked at every single option that you could possibly look at and that there's just no way out, there's just no hope. And I know now from my own experience and from having worked with so many people since that there always is a door there. In fact, there's probably multiple doors yet there. You just haven't seen them yet. You don't know that they're there yet. There's a 12-step saying, don't quit before the miracle. And it's so true. As I lay there on the floor, suddenly the phone rang. And it was Karen. She was one of the chief residents of the emergency medicine program. And she had never called me before. And as soon as I heard her voice on the line, I slapped on that perfect mask that I'd worn for decades. And I said, "Hey, Karen, what a surprise. What's going on?" And she said, "Well, I've been watching you in rounds lately, and you just don't quite seem yourself. Is everything okay?" And I said, "Sure. Haven't slept for years. Stressed out of my gourd, but that's pretty much all of us. So, given that, yeah, I'm fine. Thanks for asking." And she said, "Okay. Let me ask you something else. Did you ever hear about the resident who took her life a few years ago?" And I had. And I told her that. And she said, well, I just have a feeling that it would be very useful to you to know that when she did that, it was when she was in the second year of the residency program, during her cardiac care unit rotation, where you are right now. So I'm going to ask you one more time. Are you really okay? And at that moment, it's as if that mask that I had worn for my whole life just shattered into a million pieces all over the floor. And I told Karen the truth. I told her how terrified I was all the time, that most of the time I felt like I just had no idea what I was doing, that I didn't want to be doing it. I told her that my doctor had put me on antidepressants, and they'd helped a little at first, but now they just did not seem to be working anymore. And that's when she opened the door. In fact, she opened multiple doors at that very moment. She said, first of all, I thought something was up. So I've been authorized to give you 7 weeks paid stress leave. I know. It's like, what? Okay. Amazing, truly, how just a small shift can suddenly take you out of the darkest place you've ever been. It's incredible how that can happen. And next she told me that I'd actually already, being 2 years into the 5-year program, I'd actually earned enough credits to get a license as a general practitioner. And she said, in a couple of months, you actually would be able to quit this entirely and just work as a regular doctor. I had no idea. But the third thing she told me was the most remarkable and is truly what changed my life forever. She said, while you're away on this leave, she said, we will welcome you back. If you want to come back and finish this 5-year program, we will support you all the way. But I want you to do something for me. I want you to think about who you really are and what you might like your life to be like. I had spent my entire life taking the advice of really well-meaning people who were all convinced they knew what would be best for me. And I also looked at society and looked at what society said made for a healthy, happy, successful life. And here I was in one of the most coveted residency positions in the whole country. I mean, shouldn't I just be at the pinnacle, having the most incredible time of my life? Yet following everybody else's program had led to really the deepest pit I have ever experienced and hope that I will ever experience. I hope I'll never be that low again. And so when I first started to ask those questions, I had nothing. I had no idea. But I did have one thing, that I wanted to go to Cuba. That was all that I had. So I had to go with it. So I went by myself down to a little resort on Veradero Beach. And now, I hadn't been out of the hospital very much. And I know that sounds really bad, but you know what I mean. And I didn't want to look like a loser. So I brought this journal with me so that I could sit by the pool and look busy. I didn't think I'd actually write anything of note in it, but as I was sitting there by the pool, pretend writing in my journal. You can pretend write in your Spark notebook too, right? Don't tell them I told you that. As I was sitting there writing in my journal, I wrote down, I want to be a writer. And I was like, what? I had been pigeonholed as a scientist from the 4th grade. And to me, arts classes of any kind were to be avoided at all costs unless I absolutely had to do them to graduate. That's the only exposure to writing that I had had. And then the strangest thing happened one night. I went to the beautiful, tropical, open-air theater where every night they would put on a different kind of entertainment, sometimes a little questionable, but this particular night was really, really special. I will never forget just sitting in the very back row by myself and the moment when the lights went down and the most incredible music started to play. There were bongos, maracas, piano, trumpets, clave, ta, 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 ta. It was salsa music. And I'm sure that at some point I had heard salsa music before. But in that moment, it was like I was hearing it for the very first time. And as I sat there, the most unbelievable Cuban salsa dance team exploded onto the stage in a riot of color and passion. And I still get goosebumps every time I talk about it. And as I sat there watching them, I remembered something. I remembered that in the late 1970s, there had lived a little girl. And if you had asked that little girl what she was going to be when she grew up, she would have told you immediately. She would have said, by day, I'm going to be a journalist. But by night, get ready for this. By night, I am going to be a solid gold, oh yeah, dancer. Woo! Oh, I'm so glad you know what I'm talking about. Now, for those of you who are too young to know, and I know there are some, here is a visual clue. All right. It was all about the stilettos, the sparkling spandex, and the disco ball. And if you haven't figured this out already, that little girl was moi. And my parents, God bless them, even though I begged them for dance classes since I was about 2, they decided I was better off in gymnastics, which I really was not very good at. So I had to take matters into my own hands. And I secretly created my own little dance studio in the basement with my record player and my pile of ABBA records. Oh yeah, I've still got them. And my all-time favorite, Sesame Street Fever. They just don't make it like they used to. So I practiced my sexy moves and my high kicks and my spins because I knew that even though the grown-ups did not have a clue, one day I was going to be like my heroes, and I was going to be a professional dancer, and I was even going to dance on television, and I was going to be ready. So sitting there in that theater in Cuba, I remembered that awesome little girl. And I knew that dancing would save my life. So I went home, I resigned from my residency. I got my license as a GP, which I still use part-time to this day. And I signed up for my very first salsa dance lesson. Thank you. The applause is not for my teacher, though, because he did not recognize my potential. Poor him, I just moved right on. Took 2 more. Finally, I found a teacher who saw my potential. I was 28 years old and I'd already wasted 2 decades, so there was no time to waste. And I started performing for local salsa dance teams and started teaching workshops, and then discovered the love of my life, Spanish flamenco. So I studied flamenco. I got to go to Spain a number of times to take courses, started dancing in my local flamenco cafe. As a professional, I was getting $35 a show. I was so excited. I was living the dream. I was a doctor by day and a dancer by night. And a funny thing happened. I started getting happier and happier. I didn't need my antidepressant medication anymore. In fact, I haven't needed it for 14 years now. Yeah. Now, it's not always that simple, and there's a lot more to it, but it's amazing. It's amazing what a little passion and joy and time for yourself doing something that you love. And obviously, there was the exercise with it too. Dancing is amazing. You don't even know you're working out, which always works well for me. So I had this really strange thing next in my heart, which was that I kept having this feeling that I had to move to a Latin American country. Not really convenient when you've just graduated and just started practicing medicine. But this was the only way that I had now really as my barometer, my compass for how to live. So I decided to follow it. And I was in Mexico for 4 years. I would work part-time as a doctor in Canada. Whenever I ran out of money, I would fly up and I would work a little bit and come back. And I know, start thinking laterally. Be really creative. If you have a dream and you really can't see how you're going to make it work given the circumstances, be creative about it. Think outside the box. So down in Mexico, I started my own flamenco and salsa dance company. I got asked to perform at weddings and villas, and some celebrities, actually, I was asked to give dance lessons to. To this day, they have no idea that they were taught by a Canadian medical doctor. Doors open that you can't even believe they opened, and you may not even feel qualified. Believe me, the things that have happened in my life since, truly, I don't believe that I'm qualified to have all the opportunities that I've had. There are so many people who are so much better than me, but it's the passion. If you've got that, and I know this is a room full of passionate people, if you've got that, you won't believe where that alone will take you. So there I was in Mexico. Things were going so well. I looked back at the last few years, and I started analyzing it and figuring out, how can I help other people do this in their life, but in their own unique way? So I wrote a book about it. I started coaching people. I started getting to speak all over North America. It was just incredible. It was incredible how much just identifying a passion. That's where all this started. Identifying that I wanted to write and I wanted to dance.